Even if data is properly formatted and arranged, making sense out of it remains a task. Further, given abundant data, think of more than a million data points, manually processing data to infer something meaningful becomes a challenge. That means a given data set could be processed using pivot tables to readily and efficiently make sense out of it, achieve custom objectives, and visualize it using easy to use and automated pivot charts. Now, the enterprise resource tool has given us formatted and curated data. We have data related to employee names, date of joining, designation, bands, departments, the number of projects completed, and the budget they consumed during the 4 quarters, as well as the total annual budget. If we process this data using Pivot, it will become more meaningful and provide us with further inferences. So our agenda is to perform analysis on quarterly budget, perform individual-wise budget analysis, designation-wise budget analysis, department-wise budget analysis, compare budget utilization with progress on projects front, and finally visualize the analysis mentioned above. In order to do that, we are going to rely on pivot functions. And for the sake of simplicity, we are going to insert the pivot function in our new worksheet. In order to insert a pivot function or a pivot table, I'll simply go to Insert, click on the first tab, which is Pivot Table. It asks me at least two things. One is the range where it should pick the data from, and second, where it should provide the output. It should provide the output in this worksheet starting from cell A1, which it already shows. Now, let's click here and go to the place where our data is and select all the data points to furnish the pivot table. Press OK and you see that we have inserted our pivot table here. As of now, it does not show us anything. And of course, in order to make any sense out of it, we'll have to make changes to the pivot table field settings. Now, before we do that, what exactly a pivot table is? What exactly are pivot table fields? It is an automated tool provided to us by Microsoft Excel, which allow us to drag and drop pivot fields or the data fields to either a row or a column, or even use that as a filter function, and also helps us take a sum or average or any other mathematical operation on the numbers involved. Let's say I want to see individual wise total budget. In order to do that, I'll simply go to the pivot table field setting and I'll find the data that I'm looking for. First, I want the name of the individual to appear, let's say, in the columns. Let's drag it down. This is how it will appear. If I wanted to look at it in rows, I would simply take it here and then it appears in the rows. The next thing that I want is the annual budget. For example, I'll go to total budget and I'll drag it in the summation values field. Here, what it does is it readily gives me only those data points that I need in order to perform the analysis. If you look at this little button here and click on it, it gives you value field settings. Let's click on that. It allows me to do not just the sum, but count, average, max, min, product, and much more with these numbers. Let's just go ahead with the sum, press OK, and I have a table in front of me. It shows the sum of total budget spent by all these individuals concerned. Let's convert it into dollar values. Press OK, reduce the decimals, and here we are. Let's say I want to compare the quarterly budget and look at how did it perform in comparison with the number of projects completed. I want to first look at how the budgets were spent in different quarters. This is what they did during the first quarter. This is what they did during the second. This is what they did during the third. And this is what they did during the fourth. I want sum of budget 4 towards the end. Move to end, and I've achieved that. And I want second quarter budget before the first quarter. Move down, and that is what I want. Now let's see how does it appear when I compare it with the number of projects completed. Adam Smith completed 5, spent over $1 million in the first quarter, more than 2 in the second, more than 5 in the third, and about 2 million in the fourth quarter. Let's see if we can present the same data in a different manner. I'll drag this field to columns, and depending on our objective, it may or may not provide us the useful insights. However, here, what does it show? It shows that Adam Smith has completed 5 budgets, spent $1 million in the first quarter, 2 in second, and so on and so forth. Let's continue to play with it. Let's take projects completed to the sum. Here, I want this to appear not in dollar terms, but in number terms. And this is how it is. And I also want the sum of projects completed in the beginning. I'll simply click here and move it to the beginning. Now I can readily see the number of projects completed and the budget consumed. However, let's say I'm more interested in the department's performance rather than the individual. As soon as I remove the name, I have another interesting insight. That is, a total of 33 projects were completed during the year, and this much was spent during the 4 quarters respectively. Let's bring the department into the picture. Let's drag department into rows. And now I have an analysis which I did not have earlier with the original data. So for instance, here the economic advisory department has 1 and 2 people working for them, which spent different budgets and have different number of projects completed during the year. However, the pivot table brings that all together without much effort. Now I can readily see that the economic advisory department completed a total of 7 projects while spending more than 11 million, 14 million, more than 5 million and more than 2.5 million during the first 4 quarters. Let's also bring the total budget here. Let's drag that to the summation values field, and let's do a simple rearrangement and look at the total budget after all the quarterly budget points. Move to end. Let's close the field setting for a minute, and here we go. A simple rearrangement or cell alignment, and here I have the data related to all the departments and the projects that they completed. How do I bring the value field settings again? Click, or rather right click, show field list, and I have it back. Let's see how individuals performed in these departments. Let's again drag the name. Let's first take it to columns. This is how it will appear. Doesn't make much sense. Let's drag the names back to the field called rows. And here we go. The idea is Pivot is capable of giving you any kind of custom analytics that you need. You can continue to play with this data, play with the field settings, and customize this data according to your need. Let's perform one more analysis where I want to see how the designations are performing. I'll simply drag designation to the rows field, and this is how the performance is. Let's also try to visualize this data. Okay, and let's just stick to the analysis based on the department and the total budget. We go to the pivot table analyze option and click on the function called pivot chart. It gives me all the options that I can choose from. I can convert this data into column, lines, pie, bar, and so on and so forth. Let's try a bar graph. Press OK, and here we go. Let's paste it here. As we can see, the most amount of budget was spent by tech and product, while the least was spent somewhere by strategy and sales. Let's also perform an analysis where we are able to see this performance against the number of projects that have been completed. So in order to do that, let's insert a pivot chart again and let's use a line graph. What we see here is different lines representing the number of projects completed, budget spent in different quarters. Let's see if we can do something about this line. So let's say I want this line on secondary axis because the number of projects and the budgets, they are in different formats. So I choose secondary axis for the sum of project completed. So here we go. Let's select it from here. Right click, format data series, secondary axis, and what I have here is an analysis for the budget as well as the number of projects completed. Let's say that I want a bar graph as well as a line chart simultaneously. Let's first convert this to columns. Then let's choose the sum of projects completed individually. Format data series on secondary axis. And then I also want one more thing from it. That is, I want this as a line. So that's the option available to me. Let's do a line for sum of projects and bars for the budgets, and here we have it. And as you can see, this visualization is much more helpful than the basic data points. Now, against the department's performance in terms of budget consumed, I can also see simultaneously the number of projects completed. I could also add data labels to see the number of projects along with the visual performance.